Hi there, welcome to my channel, Lucille Williams with Christian Talk. One of the questions that I get asked from some people sometimes is, I don't know what God's will is in my life. Do you ever wonder about that? Like, what is God's will in your life? And right off the bat, if someone is married, to me, the priorities are very simple and very clear because it's God's will that you love your husband. It's God's will that you love your wife, that you cherish her and you love her like Christ loved the church. God tells us that. And if you're a wife, he says that God tells us respect your husband. So, if you don't know what God's will is and you're married, the first step is it's God's will to be good to your spouse. It's God's will to love your spouse and to nurture that relationship. So right away, not knowing what God's will is, sometimes it's just black and white. God tells us to love our spouse. That's it. So we know that is definitely part of God's will for us. Another thing is, it tells us in Scripture in 1 John that God is love. God is love. So if God is love and he loves us, then, and when you think about other scriptures like love your neighbor as yourself, the greatest of these is love. Love never fails. God tells us to love. So basically, no matter who you are, single, married, whatever, we are called to love. It is God's will for us to love. We need to love others. Now you say, well, I don't feel like loving others. Well, the person that we need to love first is ourselves. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but you need to make sure that you are filled with all the things that make you feel loved so you could give love. So if you don't feel love, then you need to pursue what makes you feel loved. Maybe it's more time in Scripture. Maybe it's more time with God and getting to know God better and asking God to meet you where you're at and to show you where you need to go. And pray. I mean, there has never been a time where I prayed and God didn't answer me in some way. Now, sometimes God is silent, and I understand that, and that happens. But if you pray and you really seek God and you say, God, I need you to come through here. I need you to speak to me in some way. And if you wait and if you listen, at some point, God will come through and he will let you know of his presence. It's the way it is. Scripture tells us that. So first we need to spend time with God, listen to God in prayer, and then find out what makes you feel loved. A friend of mine, her daughter was at that borderline shooting thing, and a trauma specialist came in. And the trauma specialist asked this young lady, through this traumatic experience, after, and he asked her, what makes you feel loved? What gives you those loving feelings? What can you do in your life to feel love? And she said she likes to be around children. So he said, go be with a family that has children and be around them. So, right away, after trauma, the trauma specialist told her, go be with people that make you feel loved, that cause you to fill up with love. And so she went and she spent some time with a family that had kids. And so if maybe that's it for you, maybe you love to be around kids, maybe you love to be around puppies, go find some puppies. And, but we need to take care of ourselves. We need to have self-care so that we could follow Scripture, so that we can do what God says and love others. Because God tells us love others. And that's what we're called to do. Love your neighbor as yourself. But you got to love yourself first. If you don't love yourself and you're not being kind to yourself, it's very hard to be kind to others. So in terms of what is God's will for me, if you're married, God's will is that you love your spouse. Definitely love your spouse. God calls you to do that. Be in harmony with them. God tells us to be in harmony with other people. And so God tells us to love others. So, right away, like if we can do that, then we are doing God's will. And then everything else will just fall into place if you just continually seek God. It says that he'll give us the desires of our hearts. So if you seek God, God will place those desires in you. And as you commune with him, he will reveal to you more and more what his direction is for your life and what his will is for your life. So that's my message today. Please hit like, hit subscribe, and check out my book, From Me to We. Until next time, be crazy amazing.